So this is kind of like a little off topic, but like if you could have a magic wand, you could change something in education, because I think there's a lot of things, and I guess why I asked that is I think there's a lot of things in education that could be changed.
Yeah.
But like, what would be the big area that could be the most value or that needs the most work? Because I think a lot of people, they go to school and then they think they want to make change and they have an idea of what they would change, but from an administrative perspective, I'm sure you get a whole different view of that. And politics are involved, there's business involved, money involved. So I'm just kind of curious on what your answer would be.
Honestly, and I've actually thought a lot about this, but I think I'm going to say if I only get to choose one thing with this magic wand.
You can do 3 if you want. It's a genie.
Yeah. The magic genie bottle. I don't know. I think right up there at the top of the list is paying teachers more. It's such a simple thing, but make that a job with a salary that is deserving. You look at other countries like Singapore, wherever else, and their teachers are getting paid $150,000 a year. It is the same level of pay that an engineer gets, right? And it's because they value education. They value the individuals teaching the next generation. They see it as something where they have to invest in, and not that, they're gonna really struggle and not have all the resources available. If you make this a job that pays well, that has the right benefits, you get people who will go into teaching and are just as motivated, inspired, and you're not making it a super difficult choice. I think that's one of the biggest things. Give teachers better salaries.
There's a higher level of talent that comes with that higher salary too,
Right, which isn't to say that the talent isn't there, but it's so unfair in a way to tell people like you could be, making 200K if you become a lawyer, or you could be making 50 as a teacher. You choose, and
you gotta kind of have that passion.
Yeah, and the passion is so important, but the salary and making sure you're earning a good living is huge. So I do think you're right, Sean. Like it would change the talent pool and the individuals who can really feel it as though it's a viable option for themselves. People want to provide for their families.
Yeah. Right. Because if you had more kids that said, Dad, I want to be a teacher, and Dad didn't go, well, that's not going to pay the bills. Right. It's like, Dad, I want to be a teacher. And it's like, hell yeah, do it.
Go for it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then there's like pride in the family too. Like there's pride to be a teacher, but it's kind of like a, hey, you got a gold star kind of thing. It doesn't really mean much to anybody or anything. And, I also think that we run like our schools as like cost centers, like we have to do it. And we're not running them as like innovation centers and like pumping, good talent out there to see what they're capable of. And I think in college, it's a little different. We do run that as like an innovation center. But there is a level of privilege that comes with that to get there.
Yeah, quite a bit of privilege. And if you're thinking about, the thousands of schools, charters, districts across the nation that we have right now, the level of education that you're receiving at each one is going to be so different based upon where you are. I mean, governmental funds and the way they're spread out is so unequal and so uneven. And some parents will just take their kids out and put them in a private school or a particular charter school. They can afford to do that. They can afford to live in the parts of the country where they know the most money is being funneled into those schools. And so the amount of money, per student is that much higher. So all of it, there's so much inequity created around it. And your point, Austin, also like it's a business, it's become a real business. And some people, if you're born in the right place, you've got family with means and you can be in the right area, you can go to the right school. Awesome. You might get a great education, but others, they're stuck. And we're not doing too much to change it.
And I think it doesn't mean you're stuck in a way. I think that there are opportunities to like get to a place and get out of that, but it's just like probability. I think that's what it comes down to. You have a less amount of people that get out of that town or place, and they are not able to have as many opportunities because it's just kind of like passed down from that. So That's really interesting. And Sean, I'd love to hear your take on that too, like, and what you think.
You know, I was actually going to ask Tiane because, you know, I'm a guy, I went to school in inner city Indianapolis for a little bit. IPS schools, you know, public school. And my parents actually lied. You know, statute of limitations passed. I can tell a story now. But my parents actually lied on our address. They used my grandma's and then my auntie's address to send me to a different school, and they just drove me to school every day because they were like, you know, you're not going to get anything out of the IPS system. And it's actually, you know, caveat, little ADD story. I would have met David West 10 years before I actually met him in college if I had just gone to school 48, because we grew up like 3 blocks from each other. We had no idea. But instead I went to Decatur, and I mean, Decatur is it's not great. It's still kind of a, you know, a trashier, you know, quote unquote school, but it's a hell of a lot nicer than the public school system. So like, I almost wonder, like, how do you even fix a problem that is that systemic, that is that big? In my, you know, my humble opinion, obviously, Tiane, you know way more about this than I do, but like, in my opinion, it comes down to sort of the zoning and the funding into schools. And, you know, while schools are in impoverished areas, only get funding from those impoverished areas. I mean, it's dog eat dog out there, you know? I mean,
yeah, you make a really fair point. It's complicated. I mean, zoning is a huge factor, and you know, those particular areas and where money is being channeled into, it's that's a pretty inequitable process at the moment. And I think it goes up to like the highest levels of government in that way for how they're going to distribute those funds and really make it equitable across the board. If we raise the teacher salaries, if we commit to providing a certain amount of funds for every single student in America, regardless of what neighborhood they're in or what school they're going to, and if that can be controlled and kind of trickled down at that level, I think that could make a huge difference. And there's so many other factors at play, I think, within the classroom, standardized testing and all of these ways in which we're trying to figure out, hey, where are schools doing well or doing more poorly? Where do we need to, you know, channel those resources? They're tough because standardized testing doesn't measure some of the things that we're looking for in today's ever-changing job landscape.
Oh
I
yeah.
think about the jobs, right? It's not factory jobs in a lot of cases, or just, you know, jobs where it's a lot of things are being automated, is guys what I'm getting at. And so the skills that you need, those 21st century skills, to say like the innovation and collaboration, creativity, how are we teaching that? How are we measuring it? And do you measure those aspects on a standardized score? If a student gets, let's say, 20 points out of 100 one year, and the next year, or they had, you know, 20 points, and the next year they get 60, that's a 40 point increase, which is awesome. But if 60 is still kind of like a failing grade and nowhere near at their grade level, that doesn't get measured how much extra work they put in to get to that next level. So that still is a struggling, you know, system, and that measurement piece is, I think,
and I think you bring up a really good point too. Like, school in a way, and I don't know, maybe you have more insight into this, Tiane, I'd love to hear this. School in a way has churned people out to be employees. And I think as we move into like the 21st century, there's more and more like collaboration and solo entrepreneurship and a variety of those different areas that people can go into. So it's no longer about like what you just listening to other people and doing what they tell you to do. And I also think that standardized test scores, like, I'm terrible at them. I'm horrible at them. And if they were any indicator for me to have success in school, I shouldn't have gone to college at all. And so I find it very interesting it's like, what would we replace that with to say, like, is that student a good student? So I'm kind of curious on what your thoughts are for that. Should there be multiple tests for like multiple categories and say like, hey, this person's more of an entrepreneur, or this person's more of like an intellect and they should go into engineering, and this person's more creative and they're a freelancer, and start to plug people into the places that they should be rather than trying to fit everybody in the same cookie cutter mold.
Yeah, like, you're hitting on some important pieces. Like the cookie cutter is not working. And I mean, I've read a lot of books in education, and something that always has just stuck out to me is the fact that in 200 or 250 years since the time when we were educating students in a schoolhouse, and students are remembering particular verb conjugations and just copying and pasting those things, and that rote memorization, not much in terms of what our instruction looked like has changed. And there's a few schools that have experimented. And so I think to get to kind of to answer your question, I don't have the perfect idea for that, but there are some schools that have kind of completely done away with the standard grades and test scores and those individual subjects. And it's really a combination of some of those subjects where they will put on a school play or build something, and there's these projects that require, in some cases, mathematical skills or an understanding of history. They're doing certain debates. And maybe they're layering history and other factors into the play. So it's looking at, verbal skills and their written skills and pulling in pieces of history. And it's that ultimate end product that is kind of graded and evaluated, how well they worked with their peers and what they contributed, what they built. And that's super exciting. And it's relating what they're learning to the actual real world. You can sit down and learn all of the calculations and learn about the Pythagorean theorem, but if you can't understand how that applies, those concepts really apply in the real world, it's like, what are you doing? Like, have kids learn to code at an earlier age and start creating apps. That's exciting,
Yeah. Well, kids are so creative when they're kids, and then we try to force them to be something that they're not, and then you're like, what's wrong with you? Why do you have problems now? Why don't you like your job? Why don't you enjoy life? And it's like, I don't know, because we probably forced them to be the complete person that they never really wanted to be in the first place.
Totally. And school should be the place where you're psyched to go. You're like, oh my God, there is so much to learn. Super psyched, hanging out with all my friends. We're working on these projects. I feel good about the fact that I'm doing well. I mean, I spent a year in the classroom teaching sixth graders, and half of them want to be YouTube stars now. That's like the new #1 career goal.
That's what Sean and I want to do. Is there a problem with that?
Absolutely not. Great aspirations. Listen, guys, we can't all be YouTube stars. I mean, but
TikTok. Can we all be TikTok stars?
Oh, that 1,000%.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
I
can see your teacher coming out right now. You'd be a great teacher.
Check with China,
Yeah, I got to check with China on that, but I'm pretty sure that was A-okay.
Right.
TikTok stardom for all.